All right. So, good afternoon, depending on which part of the USA you're in. I am just going to selfishly do a little Brucey introduction while we make sure that we are connected. So, I am Bruce Carnahan, otherwise known as the guy in the blue shirt, is my persona on LinkedIn. And actually, I have Gracie Ruth Melendez to help for that whole persona. So that's a different story anyway. So Gracie is going to hop on to make sure we're live. And the other thing I did want to do is I'm a brand ambassador for Rever. So if you want to use a app-based software to empower your frontline teams, then Rever is a great place to start. And you can either ask me for more information about that, or you can go to reverscore.com as it says in the ticker underneath the screen here. So I am honored to have Dr. Shindale with me. Did I say that right, Shindale?
Shindale, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, all right. So Doctor is also in beautiful California. And Gracie already said hi, so I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Shindale, to say hello to everybody and tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get rolling with our conversation.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Shindale Seal, and Bruce asks these questions like, "Who are you?" and it's really interesting. Sometimes those are the hardest questions to ask, and so for me, I think one of the things that I like people to know about me mostly, and you'll probably see it in my bio in LinkedIn, is that, I envision a world where, historically underrepresented and marginalized groups have equitable opportunities to succeed in academia and in the workplace. And so that's my thing. I also, I'm really, really invested in working toward that in my personal and my professional life. So for me, that a lot of that stems from having worked in hospitable places. It stems from me having gone to school and in hospitable places, and not having mentors and things of that nature. And we were just talking about mentors, and it's really, really important for me. So I'm the CEO of a nonprofit organization that does mentorship in our underserved and under-resourced communities. And I am the CEO of Seed Coaching and Consulting, which provides diversity strategy, implementation, training, all of that to make sure that our BIPOC women, LGBTQ members, things of that nature, have support and that they can succeed in academic and in professional entities. And as we discussed earlier, I'm also the chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program for the University of California at Santa Cruz, where I am building out some really amazing diversity curricula, and I'm a professor at the University of Redlands. So I'm really, really a lazy person, as you can see.
I was going to say, you have one of the most diverse and wide footprints, I think, from all of my guests so far. So you take the prize for width of talking about diversity. So, and yeah, towards the end of this live, we'll make sure that people know the best way to get a hold of you and your preferences for connecting. So you mentioned those D, E, and I words several times. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. So for those of us that don't know very much about this, including me, so I'm here to learn as well. Perhaps you can tell us what you see each of those terms means here.
Well, it's funny because, Bruce, we have DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of people, they're collocates, honestly, in a lot of ways. We hear them together all the time, and it's almost as though it's like one word, but in reality, they do mean very different things that actually come together to create sort of like a trifecta in a way, and like it creates like this meaningful interaction and workplaces for people. So for instance, like diversity, when we talk about it in the workplace, it just means basically employing people from different backgrounds, different ethnic background, LGBTQ, age, things of that nature. So it's just basically a range of difference within your workforce. When we talk about equity, that basically means that, the fair treatment and access for all members, while still considering the historic barriers that have prevented people from being able to contribute, fully. So when I'm considering, job applications or things of that nature, it's really, really important to look and see, well, why are women underrepresented in this particular situation or whatever, things of that nature. And then when we have inclusion basically means that people feel like they can fully contribute to their organization and bring their authentic selves to the workplace. And this, interestingly enough, is equally as difficult as equity. And why that is because we have workplaces that are not constructed necessarily to enhance equity and enhance inclusion. And I have a really great anecdote, like with Twitter. A few years back, we saw this where they were, they'd seen all the data, and the data indicated that, like a lot of us know, that there's a dearth of women in engineering and in technology and things of this nature. And so they did like a demographic kind of profile of their organization. They did a demographic profile, nationally. And what they found confirmed it. It said, hey, you know what? There are not a lot of women in these fields. And so they actually determined that we are going to set diversity goals to increase the amount of women in our engineering departments and in our, the higher echelon C-suite and whatnot. And it was hugely successful because what they did was, like, they benchmarked it, they looked at the environment. It was really, really research driven. And so regardless of size, this really shows that, like, if you're able to really look at the data and determine and define diversity for yourself, that you can, you can actually look to start creating some serious diversity in your organization. And right now, we've got that remote situation.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody is working from home. This is why we're here. And that increases opportunities for diversity exponentially. It's literally just a LinkedIn search. That's my plug for LinkedIn, or a Google search away from, just finding diverse candidates, people with disabilities, older workers, things of this nature. So there really is no excuse for not having a diverse workplace. We also have people, organizations that don't have the remote option, and for them, location is key. So when I'm speaking and I'm advising my clients, I tell them, hey, look around, look at your community. What's the representation in your community? And then you compare that to your workforce. What's in your workforce? Does your workforce reflect what's in your community? And if it doesn't, then that's how you may want to define your diversity. And then, of course, they say, well, the people in the community aren't skilled in what we do. And, well, then that offers you another opportunity. You're actually able to create corporate social responsibility initiatives, things of that nature. So, and get into the community and starting programs that would help people, give them access to your sector and things of this nature. So, so it is diversity in itself, inclusion, equity. It requires a really deliberate approach to, especially within the workforce, because we can easily just pick people that we know and that look like us, and it's easy. Right. But it really pushes us to see a broader, more wide view in hiring and in in advancement, things of that nature.
Awesome. So I want to give a shout out, talk about diversity and inclusion. Gracie's joined, LinkedIn user. I'm not sure who that is, but Karina is, and Odessa. Odessa's actually all the way from the UK. So
hi,
thank you for joining. And so we've also heard a lot about people, actually feel that they end up leaving workplaces when there's a lack of DE and I. So But on the flip side of that, when organizations do get there, what are some of the things that you've seen that have allowed those organizations with a diverse and equitable and inclusive manner help keep their staff these days?
Well, first and foremost, environment is everything. Like, environment is king. Right? If you have a hospitable environment for your team members, regardless of if they're diverse or if they're just all like homogenous, you are going to have you're not going to have an attrition problem. You're not going to have an attrition problem. So, we've seen recent trends right now with our Gen Z cohort. And they are beasts when it comes to like diversity and equity and inclusion. They're like, look, I am not considering an organization where, everybody looks the same, everybody thinks the same, everybody, dresses the same, whatever. They are about diversity. They are about inclusion. They are about equity. And, we've seen situations where like Black women, like myself, like they go into an organization and they can't wear their hair or their natural hair, or they're ridiculed because of the way that they may present themselves, or their credentials are questioned, or things of this nature. We've seen older people who they try to go into workplaces, but they're hearing these jokes about, oh, you're so slow, or you're so tech unsavvy, or whatever. And it's really, it can create a really hostile environment. And this is where the attrition comes in, because who wants to stay in that? Who wants to stay in that? It's also important to mention that within the hospitable environment, the only way really to do that is to make sure that you have psychological safety. We're in meetings, and this really great idea pops into my mind, and I'm like, oh, I want to state my idea, and I get ridiculed for it. It's super innovative, but because the powers that be are not feeling me, or they're whatever, I get, there are issues, and then I feel as I recoil. So there's no safety in that, and of course, the key part of that is like feeling as though you're included. You have to feel to be psychologically safe in your organization, for that environment to exist. People must feel as though they're included. They must feel as though they're being developed and that they're growing, right? Because now I know that I'm actually a part. You're investing in me. They must feel as though they can contribute, like I just said, without retribution or ridicule. They must feel as though they can challenge the prevailing norms and things of that nature. So safety is key, especially when you want high performing teams. It's not, it just can't happen. Also mentorship is vital. We were talking about that. Mentorship is huge. And one of when we go into organizations, and we've seen it a lot, you go in and you're assigned a mentor, maybe, or it just organically happens. Someone sees you and they're like, I really see something in that person. I think I want to connect with them. Well, we've seen it fall along like gender lines or racial lines or ethnic lines and things of that nature. So, men mentoring men, women mentoring women, Asians mentoring Asians, things of that nature. But the problem with it is that there are not enough C-suite or higher ranking underrepresented groups to mentor the underrepresented lower ranks. So, and then you have men who don't necessarily feel comfortable mentoring women, and women who don't necessarily feel comfortable mentoring men. So that divide is something that can be definitely worked on. There's a huge space there for development. Because when you actually start training underrepresented groups, then we don't have the issue where the Wells Fargo guy said, oh, well, there's not enough Black talent. There's not enough whatever other kind of talent because you haven't developed them. That's why there isn't it, actually, there is, but he just was being lazy. He didn't find it. Another one is like, if you create opportunities, you have to create opportunities for development. Who wants to go into a job where there's no future?
Yeah.
And it's key to be able to feel as though you can grow with an organization, you can advance with this organization. And in reality, it's not so much what it's who you know. And this is where the mentoring piece and the sponsoring piece comes in. mentors create opportunities, and sponsors advocate for their mentees, to be properly developed and advanced when the time comes. So these are some really key points to help underrepresented groups to advance. Succession planning, things of that nature. It's important to develop people for that next key role. So these are some things that I would say that would help people to stay. If you're actually successful enough to get that diverse workforce, right? So,
yeah. So it's interesting. The undertones of what you're talking about is probably generically called leadership, and I know there's people talk about motivational leaders and transformational leaders. So what do you see is the leadership vogue, as it were, once you start to really get into diversity, equity, and inclusion? What are some of the things you're seeing out there?
Well, I guess any type of leadership, honestly, as opposed to like dictatorial leadership or whatever, could work, right? But I think that my favorite, and what in my research, the most impactful type of leadership, I would say, would be like situational leadership.
Yeah.
And it pretty much is what it sounds like. You have a person who's able to identify circumstances. They understand their team, the dynamics of that. They understand how to get to that goal, and they're actually able to pivot on a dime, right? So that pivot on a dime part is key.
Right.
When you're dealing with diverse teams, it's really understanding that team dynamic. So those two features are so important. And if we can't go through our day and our months and our years with our teams and not understanding the historical situation that they've gone through. So, for instance, we look at women. We look at the barriers that existed for them, educationally and professionally. We look at African Americans and a lot of the barriers that existed for them. We look at Asian Americans. They were excluded for many, many years. Which limited their access to be able to enjoy, the fruits of their labor and the promise of America. So when we're looking at this as a leader, there are certain expectations. Like, okay, for instance, and this is a great one. This week was key. We had this election, and everybody's stressed out. A lot of people. On both sides, right? You've got some people who are like, oh my gosh, I hope he stays in. And there are other people who are like, oh my God, I pray he gets kicked out, right? And then, both groups have to come to work. They have to come to work. They have to perform. They have to do their thing. And you as a leader, wherever you stand on the issue, you have to be cognizant enough to understand why this person may be feeling stressed and why this person may be feeling stressed. And they're not the same kind of stress. And, the implications for the election are vastly different for either side. So in being able to look at this and say, okay, well, I see this person over here, they're having this type of stress. Let me deal with this in a way that's going to help them to really to know that they're heard, know that they're valued, and then help them to still be able to mobilize this and produce. That's what I call like equitably situational leadership right there. You are looking at what these people are going through and you're saying, okay, I understand why you feel the way that you do.
Right.
Let me help you get there. You can't treat everyone the same, obviously, because in one of our really, really profound quotes, equality breeds inequity, because if I'm treating you or someone's treating you the same way they're treating me, they're not acknowledging our backgrounds and our experiences. So this was this is something that when I look at leadership, I really, really prefer for diverse teams, situational leadership, and especially equitably situational leadership, because they're really looking at and considering you as a whole person, you as your authentic self in decision making and in approaching.
So I want to throw something at you. I actually lead by intuition very often.
Uh-huh.
Comes from the fact I was brought up in an all-female household, so I'm pretty
Nice.
well tuned into the intuition. So I think intuitional leadership actually means inclusion. So that would be my learning from what you just said, is if you can actually wrap your intuition around people at the individual level, and I call those are the bright-eyed people. I always go, work with the bright-eyed people, because they're going to actually show you and tell you all the things you're missing, because they see them.
Yeah, exactly. If they feel safe to do so, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So
and I think that gut thing is awesome. I mean, if you were in a house, if you were raised in a house where people I sense that this is happening with you, then that actually gives you the freedom and the flexibility to be able to do it yourself. Right. And it looks as though you've actually honed that amazing skill that a lot of us have buried, because we've been taught to rely on certain things and not, intuition and not gut and whatnot. There needs to be a balance, definitely.
Well, I use data as well, but when data and kind of the feeling are about equal, I always go with my intuition. Whether the data says you're crazy or not, Bruce, or your margin, the improvement you're going to get is marginal. If it feels right and you can include particularly cross-functional teams, and usually, the more complex decisions are normally those where data doesn't really lead the way for you. You have to use data and intuition, and I find that it rarely fails me in my situation, at least. So, but yeah, it's pretty gutsy. You have to kind of stand up and take a lot of darts at times, and things that people want to throw at you when you do that. But if you believe in it and you include people and you're flexible, as you say, along the way, that's super important.
Yeah, you absolutely have to be. I mean, that flexibility piece. I think that a lot of times leaders they lean on, well, I've been here before, I've done this, I'm the one who's in charge, so I know. And what that does is absolutely exclusive, right? It kicks everybody out of the room.
Yeah.
And it produces a wall, a barrier to innovation, to creativity, to involvement, to engagement. Because now the only person allowed it to do that is you and those who are in your in-group, who you let in. And whereas, yes, definitely your thoughts and your opinions and your ideas are absolutely valuable, it's not the only piece of data that we should be considering, because you haven't had every experience in the world. But we've been brought up, a lot of us, like our initial experiences with leaders have been the person who says it and it's done. No other, I mean, how many times have we thought about, and I teach leadership too, at the university. And one of the things is, like, when I always ask students, like, what was your first experience with a leader? And they're like, well, this person who, they meant what they said and they said what they meant, and that was it. And it's like, that is such a toxic, way to lead groups of people, and especially people with different points of view, different backgrounds. You completely cut them off. So it's that's something I think that we really have to work to push out, because that actual belief is still very much real and alive in a lot of academia, a lot of our corporate spaces, and it would do us a disservice to continue it, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I always say good luck to people that are only leading with past experience this year, because there's been no other year like it for past experience, right? So,
exactly. Unless you were alive during the previous pandemic, and I don't think there are a whole lot of people who can, be really provide us with good intel on that one. So yeah.
Hey, I'm pushing the maturity edge, but I'm not that old. But yeah, so yeah, I would say, well, good luck with that, and I find it also amazing that a traditional, what I call command and control structure, just doesn't work this year, and is not worked, and it's frustrated a lot of people, both on the receiving end of how to do work differently, and very complicated for the leaders that led in that way. So that style, I would say, has gone out forever. I hope, anyway.
We hope, crossing fingers, eyes, and toes on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I wanted to just pause. So, Maria, thank you for joining. Maria is I love all of my network because I pride myself on having diverse, equitable, and inclusive people. So
there you go.
particularly for my lives, if people go back and look at my lives and look at all the different background of people that I've had, it's like, yay, way to go. So
awesome.
Yeah. So Maria's a relatively new connection, but a loyal connection. So thanks for hopping on, Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Yeah. And if you are seeing this live and you have a question, you can pop it in the comments. And between Doctor and I, we will go back and answer any questions. And if you're seeing this as a replay or recording, you can also do the same. So please feel free to do that. And so I just wanted to get towards, what do you see on the horizon now, Doctor, for the foreseeable future in this part of our leadership, the way of doing work?
Well, as you just noted, like everything has been upended, everything has been flipped on its head. But I will say that it's actually for the better. I really believe that the future is bright. Mm-hmm. I'm a hopeless optimist, sometimes pessimist, but I'm a hopeless optimist with this, because I think that when we are opened up, like the whole global community now that we have, like you just talked about, we have people, we're connected with people the world over. What does that do for our ability to be able to find candidates for our vacant positions? No longer are we beholden to, well, we're just here in LA, we just got to look for people here in LA. No. Remote work has knocked that off the tilt. We can get anybody with any skill set, literally with a web search. And so and this is why really the future is bright in my estimation. I think we're going to see, hopefully, I'm hopeful that we'll see, and my colleagues and I in DE&I, we work very, very diligently to make sure that that the environments are ready and are willing to bring in people that are more diverse. So I'm hopeful. I'm crossing my fingers that we're going to see more people with disabilities. And every time we talk about diversity, that's like the missing piece, right? That's like the missing link. We have so many people with disabilities. They are the largest minority in the nation, maybe the world, but they only have like a 33% employment rate. And those employment rates are like, in areas and in sectors where they're not really able to fully embrace their skill set, what they can do. And so I'm really excited to see how we're going to be able to incorporate this particular group into our academic spaces, our corporate spaces, our nonprofit spaces, especially with that huge benefit of diverse work. One of the biggest issues that we have, or that the United States in itself has with people with disabilities, especially people with visible disabilities, is that, it makes people uncomfortable or whatever. And not that this is a cop-out in any way, but what is the excuse now? Now that we're working remotely, what is the excuse? There were these excuses that, reasonable accommodations are too expensive. But we were finding that even though they didn't cost the companies anything, they still weren't doing it. So what is the excuse? So that's one group that I would love to see really grow within the workforce. I think neurodiverse individuals are another group. They're part of the peoples with disabilities, but it's people who have like cognitive. They learn differently and things of that nature, and they're amazingly innovative. I would love to see it. It would be awesome. I think that when we talk about gender, race, things of that nature, we're always on that. So that's on its way, but we haven't really scratched the surface. I'd like to see people being able to bring their authentic selves on their virtual calls. You know, sometimes we have to be a certain way, regardless of what's happening and regardless of what stresses are in the household or whatever. I'd really like to see leaders become more aware of that. I'm really hoping. I'm hoping that our leaders take this opportunity to really like do a lot of self-searching and create the spaces that are necessary.
Sure.
Create the spaces that are necessary.
So I have a couple of ideas. I'll let you wrap up and let people know the best way to reach you. But if you're seeing this live and you have a leader that you would like to impact and influence, then once it goes to a recording on my page, you should forward them this interview and let them ponder what we're learning here from Doctor. So that would be one positive suggestion we could do. But that would be my that's how I'm going to use this. If I see a leader who's clearly not on the DE&I landscape or doesn't even know what it is, then I'm actually going to use this as a resource moving forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey, it's like a, basic 101 on DE&I,
Yes. Well, honestly, and here's my plug, at Seed Coaching and Consulting, we have over 30 workshops, 30 different diversity topics that we do workshops on, and we do all the assessments and all that for organizations to really determine if leaders and their organizations are ready to take on this task. So there are too many resources out there for us to still be doing things the way we've been doing it, honestly.
You bet. Yeah. So that's a great way. So how do you prefer people to reach you?
Oh, well, since we're on LinkedIn, please connect with me. It's my name, Dr. Shindale Seal, and I will gladly accept your connection request. Also, if you connect with me and you put in there that, hey, you saw me on the show or whatever, I've got a special gift for you. An ebook, actually, that speaks to everything that we just talked about and is pretty much like a quick reference guide for you, for leaders and people in organizations in leadership roles who may want to learn and just have like quick tips on how to create diverse, inclusive and equitable spaces. So make sure you mention this show and seeing this, and then I'll get that out to you ASAP.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to take you up on that as well. So thank you so much. If you'd like to just hang for a minute and I'll let you know how you're going to get this. Thank you, everybody that jumped on. I'm trying to go through all the comments, but there's too many for me to, I'm not really good at being that, that diverse. Maybe
it's the multitask thing.
Multitasking.
But not the multitask. That's okay.
Correct. All right. So thanks everyone for coming on. Again, if you're watching this as a recording, you can still put your questions in the feed and we will get back to you. And a marvelous Monday, and take care, everybody. And we will see you soon.
Bye, folks.
Bye.